says by expanding access, it's another measure aimed at keeping people safe in Ontario. Which areas receive the rapid testing will be based on what the local medical officers of health recommend. It'll be done for unvaccinated, asymptomatic students and children who are not high-risk contacts. Symptomatic or high-risk contacts should continue to access the lab-based testing available at assessment centres and other collection centres. The Premier, Doug Ford, will be in Timmins today, so he won't be in his seat at Queen's Park. This is the first scheduled question period of the new session of the legislature today. Yesterday's throne speech did emphasize pandemic recovery measures. City News Time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some late day clearing for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls, 18 for the high today, and just a few clouds tonight, the low near 8 degrees. Tomorrow, lots of sunshine and quite mild, up to 21. For today, the high, 18.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 12 degrees. Well, following yesterday's planning committee meeting, one city councillor doesn't understand why the new civic campus was approved. That site approval came yesterday at committee stage. Here's City News reporter Perushka Gopalkista.
Although the planning committee voted 6-2 in favor of the new civic campus, community transit is a concern. Councillor Jeff Lippo, who voted against the site plan, says that he doesn't understand why the plan was approved, even though a concrete transit plan is not yet in place.
I believe that we should be only moving ahead with this site plan approval when that is nailed down and much more concrete.
The next phases of the campus construction will still need approval in the weeks ahead, but City Council is expected to vote on the plan next week. Perushka Gopalkista, City News.
City News Time, 9:02. Water at the Ottawa Hospital has been turned off on some floors for a couple of weeks due to a case of legionellosis. Detailed in the CBC, water had to be turned off on September 21st after a person was diagnosed. The Legionnaire's disease is a severe form of pneumonia, and it's one of the possible diseases the bacteria can lead to. Yesterday, water was suspended on floors 4 through 8 as the system underwent a cleaning process. The Federal Conservative Caucus will meet today in Ottawa. MPs will be deciding if they want to enact a rule. It gives them power to review Erin O'Toole's leadership. The move would require written notice backed by at least 20% of caucus. The Conservatives not only failed to take power from the Liberals last month, but they actually finished the election with 2 fewer seats than they won in 2019 under former leader Andrew Scheer. And London's fire brigade says an incident at Westminster subway station saw smoke billowing from an electrical room in the basement. That is now under control. In a statement, the London Fire Brigade says 6 engines and about 140 firefighters were involved in the incident at the subway station, which is nearest to Britain's Parliament. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, it's another busy one in the news business. Going to cover a lot of ground between now and noon. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Just working on some of the material that we're getting ready to go with here. Going over it with David. It is really amazing the territory that we can cover on the Rob Snow Show. Plenty of local issues are in the mix. There's a FEDCO meeting happening today for your city council, members of the city council. I mean, outside of city council itself, FEDCO is the most important committee of them all, and we'll be paying attention to all the ins and outs here at City News. We're going to cover some other big city issues as well. Everything from the current problems with the light rail system to the future plans for the light rail system. Because I would remind you, we are really closer to the beginning of our light rail journey in Ottawa than we are to the end. A long way to go yet. We are also going to discuss the plans for the civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital, the new civic campus for the Ottawa Hospital. They were talking about that this week at the planning committee, and it's a local project in in the billions of dollars. It's a multi-billion-dollar investment into healthcare in the city. And yet it's still a project that faces a lot of local opposition. And there are many, many questions about whether we're really making the right decision putting this hospital on that site. And we continue to follow the investigation into the Panda Game riot in Sandy Hill. Can we just call it that, the Panda Game riot? Okay. The police investigation is underway, and the Ottawa Police released some photos yesterday. You can see the persons of interest, ottawa.citynews.ca. And I have questions for you all about all of these local issues, and I hope you'll bring some answers today. That's why we do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's an hour of your opinions. It's an hour of taking your phone calls. It's an hour of taking the pulse of the community, okay? Facebook can go down for hours on end. Hey, Facebook can go down and stay down for all I care. We'll always have the Talkback Hour. Okay? All you need is a radio and a telephone. And you're in business. So I hope you'll take advantage of the platform when it's your turn to weigh in on these many important issues. I mean, I think about just the money involved and the time involved. The new civic campus for the Ottawa Hospital. That is supposed to be a $2.8 billion project. Light Rail Phase 1, $2.1 billion project. Phase 2 of Light Rail, more than $4 billion. Phase 3, oh yes, there's one more phase to go. I believe the price tag for that is close to $5 billion. So all of these are big money decisions, and you're paying the bills. And I love it that we have a platform that allows you to have your say on these decisions, the decisions that have already been made and the decisions that have yet to be made. In addition, we always have great guests on the program. Of course, today no exception. Have you heard, for example, about the energy crisis? Not huge news in Canada right now. Maybe it will be. Maybe it will be. The worry is it could only be a matter of time, and it could mean a very expensive winter is on the way for most of us. We have oil prices now, they're up again today, pushing up against $80 a barrel, U.S. Okay? Gas around the corner here at the Esso, this is my benchmark, okay? It was $139.9 this morning, $139.9. Let's call it $1.40 a liter. Okay, I know you can drive around town. You probably get a better price, but look, my workplace is here, the Esso's here, the Tim Hortons is here. It's all very convenient for me. But maybe in a few days, weeks, maybe that looks like a screaming deal. And you'll think, gosh, remember the good old days when I could get gas for $139.9? I don't know. That's why we talk to people who know. There are a lot of people who follow the energy market who are very, what we call, bullish. In other words, they're optimistic. They think prices are going to go up, potentially way up. We have a story in the Canadian news media this morning about the Line 5 pipeline. That's back in the news now. This critical energy pipeline that supplies so much energy to Eastern Canada, like half the gasoline supply to the biggest cities in Eastern Canada. And the Canadian government has now invoked clauses in this 1977 treaty that we have with the Americans to make sure that that product can continue to flow through that pipe, which is not guaranteed because the governor of Michigan, a close ally of the American president, has vowed to shut it down, citing environmental concerns, worries about spills. In the UK, many gas stations have no gasoline. Not because there's a shortage of gasoline, but because There is a labor shortage. Truck drivers. They don't have enough qualified truck drivers to actually get the gasoline to the gas stations. They have had to call in the army in the UK to get gasoline to gas stations. And then you have the price of natural gas. Anybody get an Enbridge bill? Okay, maybe even a bigger story. Natural gas prices now nudging up against $6 on the commodities markets. That means they are up 135% in a year. Supply issues, demand issues, geopolitical issues. Everywhere you look, we got issues. Even coal, the dirty, dirty fuel. Price for coal across Europe, a 13-year high. And China is suffering from an energy shortage, the world's biggest consumer of coal and natural gas. Okay? And they're having rolling blackouts. Factories have closed, and the Chinese government has told its big state-owned energy companies, buy everything you can, go all over the world. Money is no object. Don't worry about the price. Quote unquote, at all costs. If you heard my Snow and 60 commentary yesterday, at all costs. Does that sound like you're going to save any money this winter? Just curious. We're going to get into all of it, why it's all happening, what it's going to mean for you, if all you want to do is cook a meal and heat your home this winter. Dan McTeague, former Liberal MP, well-known gas price guru, with Canadians for Affordable Energy, has been sounding off on this for many weeks now. And Professor Ian Lee, as well, with Carleton University, joins us every Tuesday morning. With the professor and some of our other guests, also want to get into the Paradise Papers. David is not named in the Paradise Papers. I am not named in the Paradise Papers. Maybe someday David will be lucky enough. They'll do a story about us in our Paradise Papers, okay? But look, the Paradise Papers about wealthy people hiding money offshore is only going to add to the narrative that the whole economy is rigged. It's rigged. How many times did you hear Jagmeet Singh say something along those lines during the most recent election campaign, right? That there's one system for the wealthy, and they hide their money offshore. They can hire all the tax experts and lawyers they can afford to help them stash their fortunes offshore. And then there's a system for the rest of us. And if you owe CRA $1,000, they'll chase you to the end of the earth looking to collect. And in the meantime, our social welfare programs are starved for funding. That's the way the narrative goes, right? 3,000 Canadian companies and individuals are named in the Paradise Papers. Everything from the Montreal Canadiens Hockey Club to the Loblaws grocery store chain to one of the Saputo cheese billionaires and figure skater Elvis Stoico in the Paradise Papers. We'll also get into that with Toby Sanger with a group called Canadians for Tax Fairness. Big day for conservative politics in the country. In just a few minutes from now, Aaron O'Toole will face his caucus after the crushing election defeat. And some caucus members are calling for his head. They don't think he should continue as leader of the Conservative Party anymore because of the result of the election. Lost ground in the West, didn't pick up ground where it needed to, like Ontario and Quebec. Think he moved the party too much to the center, maybe even the left, ran as liberal light. You've heard all of this. Offered up a carbon tax, lots of complaints about the leadership of Aaron O'Toole. There have also been MPs who have come out and expressed support for him and have said now's not the time to boot another leader, have another leadership race. This party could be back into an election soon enough, and you never know, we just might win, they say. Syndicated columnist Michael Taube on all of that. Used to work for a guy named Stephen Harper. And we'll even talk some sports this morning. I'm looking forward to that. Sens hockey. Sens lost to the Leafs last night in exhibition play. But Sens fans, and I am one, are getting a better idea of just what the team's going to look like come opening night for the NHL's regular season. But the big question is, where's Brady? Where's Brady Tkachuk? What's the holdup in getting him signed? Is he even going to be in the lineup come opening night? They're cutting it close. The great Wayne Scanlan covers the Ottawa Senators for Sportsnet.ca, and he will join us later in the program. See, I told you, we cover a lot of ground on this show. Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and, see the process and, of course, ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30-odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. But yeah, it's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. Running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcoming back Dan McTeague, President, Canadians for Affordable Energy. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. Thank you for the time. Canada has invoked a 1977 pipeline treaty with the United States to try and prevent the closure of the Line 5 pipeline. What does that mean? Why is that important?
Well, the treaty is important as far as countries honoring treaties, but I think the word that you used, I think, is the appropriate one, try. Treaties are made to be broken, and unfortunately, depending on who is to benefit from this, and that would assume Canada has no choice but to say it benefits from this, because of course without it, most of Eastern Canada would simply shut down economically. The same may not be true of the United States, and it would really be a matter of whether or not the Biden administration would want to go along with what Michigan is requesting. And there's probably a lot more people from the camp that says shut down pipelines whispering in the ears and having the attention of President Biden. So whether the treaty goes through, I'm hopeful that the treaty would be honored, but times have changed. That's virtually a 45-year treaty that many will say has long since passed its need, and therefore I'm not confident that we should hang our hat on that. Of course, the federal government doesn't have many other options, especially given our own behavior in Canada of permitting the shutdown and blockages, not just of oil pipelines, but obviously of natural gas pipelines pre-pandemic, as we saw.
Okay. What is the significance of Line 5 for people who don't know?
It's the proverbial aortic artery, if you will, for all of Eastern Canada's oil, gasoline needs, aviation fuel needs, propane. You would literally be looking at about half of all of your oil being affected, the oil that goes to running our chemical plants, the oil needed to allow refineries to make diesel, gasoline, aviation fuel, and virtually all of our propane that we use. Now, a lot of people think, well, hey, barbecue is no big deal. But propane is used in far more than that. Farmers use it to dry grain. They use it propylene for making plastics and other products. And of course, it's used in many industrial settings. Think here, of course, of tow motors that you use in a warehouse. Those would all be without propane. So it's a pretty significant hit if it were to happen. I don't think anyone argues it would be a catastrophic hit to the Eastern Canadian economy, and comes at a time in which rising energy prices would make a bad situation that much worse.
Okay. The financial media, especially when it comes to commodities and energy commodities, is filled with news stories about the quote-unquote energy crisis, that there is an energy crisis in China and an energy crisis threatens Europe. What is the energy crisis? What is causing the energy crisis in those parts of the world?
In a word, supply is not meeting exceeding demand. This is post-pandemic demand recovery, and it's caught a lot of these same individuals who have said for some time there's no big deal with the energy transition. The appetite for hydrocarbons, fossil fuels, oil and natural gas is rising at an unprecedented pace, and it's likely to lead to a number of countries being short of supply. Not just coal, of course, which we don't use much here in Canada, although we do export a lot, as does the United States. There's a shortage of natural gas, and that's in Asia a function of the fact that they have not developed their natural gas sector. In Europe's case, that's on them. They've decided not to have natural gas fracking. They've decided to rely on external sources from the United States, which has its own challenges right now in terms of meeting its demand. And of course, Russia, the old famous geopolitical Russia, which is basically using its natural gas supplies really as a power tool to ensure that Europe accedes to its many requests. And I won't go down that whole political road, but there's no doubt that Europe's desire to go to this green transition is now having a dramatic and negative impact on its ability to meet the storm ahead, the winter that is coming. A lot of that to do with the fact that they've transitioned and spent billions of dollars transitioning, shutting down coal plants, turning their back on natural gas plants, not updating their nuclear plants, especially in the UK and, of course, in Germany. And what it's really leading to is record prices for natural gas, liquid natural gas, coal if they want to buy it, if they can get their old factories up and their old utilities up and running again, their production facilities. What it really means is that it is going to be the proverbial winter of our discontent, and a lot of it. Yeah. We can't underestimate the same financial writers you refer to, Rob. The same ones that thought nothing of ESG, that's environment sustainable, and governance mandates, which basically say, hey, don't invest in fossil fuels. We can do all this on wind and solar. Well, Britain is proving that you can't, especially when you have no wind and you have cloudy.
Well, yeah, we just saw the news from the Case to Date Bow here in Canada, though, a massive pension fund. We're getting out of that and investing in that industry. But nevertheless, people might say, well, okay, that's Europe, okay, that's China. What could it mean for Canada? What could it mean for Canadians? What could it mean for people living here in Ottawa?
Well, already you have noticed a 24% increase in your natural gas, right? That's because we're not producing enough. We've prevented a lot of producers from getting back into the business and getting back into the business very quickly. They can't get the money. You have woke capitalists saying, no, we don't want to do it. You saw the Caisse de dépôt de placement in Quebec doing exactly the same thing at precisely the wrong time, at precisely the time when you need more hydrocarbons. They're proposing a solution, a panacea, which actually aggravates and makes a bad situation that much worse. We need to really refocus and right the ship here. I don't think the solution is at hand. We know that renewables are not in any way, shape, or form efficient. I know that Ottawa is on a frenzy, your city is on a frenzy in terms of turning everything into windmills and solar. But we're not there yet, and the cost is certainly far more prohibitive than anything anyone could possibly imagine. I think we're hitting a point of inflection here, Rob, where people are going to have to start to think very clearly. That's all nice to have these wonderful aspirational ideas about the kind of economy we want, but we're not there yet, and we may be decades away. So I think, in a word, we need to smarten up and get realistic.
Dan, what carbon taxes are on fuel right now, and what carbon taxes are coming soon?
This is the one that keeps me awake at night. We now have about 8.84 cents a litre carbon tax on fuel and diesel and gasoline, equivalent on natural gas and propane. But we are now looking at an increase, obviously, every April 1st, and at April 1st, 2022, it goes up. It accelerates. The increase will be about 4 or 5% every year post 2022. But the one that has me very worried is the second carbon tax, the so-called clean fuel standard. You didn't hear about it in the election. You should have. The Trudeau government has moved carbon taxes from $50 a ton to $1.70 a ton. That's an extra 38 cents a litre. You're now looking at a clean fuel standard. There's only one jurisdiction that I know in Canada that has that. It's British Columbia. That's 16 cents a litre for gasoline in addition, and 18 cents for diesel. Wow. In other words, on December 1st, 2022, in 14 months, you're probably going to be paying about $2 a litre or more for fuel. I just don't know how that can be absorbed by consumers, much less the economy.
Okay, let me get your short-term projection. Gas around the corner here at the SO is $139.9. Yep. What do you see happening here in the next just few days for gas in Ottawa?
Yeah. Glad you asked that, because I don't think I've been able to tell anybody quite as dramatically. It's going to 141.9 on Thursday. It's Tuesday today. That would make it the all-time record for fuel prices here in Ottawa. Ditto for the rest of the country. Of course, BC and Newfoundland's already seen record prices in the 170s and 150s, 60s, respectively. But here in Ontario, we've never seen prices like this ever. So 142.9 for Toronto, 141.9 for Ottawa, and I would expect that the rest of the week will continue to smash through records. We could very well see a scenario where at $1.50 a litre well before the end of the month, unless, of course, markets reverse dramatically and suddenly someone can supply the market with a lot more oil, a lot more natural gas. One of the reasons is that the shortage of natural gas is getting companies and countries to shift over to heating oil as an alternative, and that's driving up oil prices. OPEC has no interest in producing more, and Canada, the United States, thanks to the woke capitalists and green agenda, can't produce anymore. So we're in a pickle, folks, and carbon taxes, a weak Canadian dollar as a result of not selling enough energy, and the other factor of basically less supply at a time in which there is more demand makes it that we're going to be paying record prices for virtually all our forms of energy: natural gas, propane, and gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel, and locomotive fuel over the next several weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Good to be here.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Rob.
Dan McTeague, President, Canadians for Affordable Energy, and you heard that. His prediction: Thursday, we will hit an all-time record for the price of gas in Ottawa, $141.9 per liter. 9:30, the news next. This is City News.
1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 13 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Ontario is rolling out a rapid COVID-19 testing program. This is for schools in areas of the province with a high transmission rate of COVID-19. The Chief Medical Officer of Health says it can help identify the cases and prevent transmission in schools for children that aren't yet eligible to be vaccinated. Dr. Kieran Moore says the actual decision on where this will be implemented will be up to the local medical officers of health along with parents. A pub on Montreal Road hosting their second COVID-19 vaccine clinic after success the first time they tried this. At the first pop-up clinic, Ottawa Public Health administered 49 doses at Finnegan's Pub. Now, next Saturday, anyone can pop in to the Montreal Road location from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon to get a first, second, or even third dose. Of course, you have to qualify specifically for that third dose. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is in Timmins today, so that means he will miss the first question period of the new session of the legislature. Federal Conservative Caucus also meeting today. That's in Ottawa. MPs will decide if they want to enact a rule. It will give them power to review the leadership of Aaron O'Toole. City News Time, 9:34. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
So again, that's the prediction from Dan McTeague, Canadians for Affordable Energy, that prices for gasoline will hit a record on Thursday of $141.9 a liter for regular unleaded. And let's just pick right up right where we left off with the professor, Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. Good morning, because one of the topics I wanted to talk about with you is the energy crisis, this so-called energy crisis. I mean, the headlines are everywhere. Ottawa invokes 1977 pipeline treaty in bid to resolve Enbridge's Line 5 dispute. German power hits record in November. Global energy crisis drives U.S. coal prices to two-year high. Power cuts in China. British military driving fuel trucks amid gas station crisis. Americans worried about winter prices. I mean, the headlines go on and on and on like this. But what does it mean for us, do you think, Professor? How could all of this affect Canadians?
I'm glad we're talking about this because, I mean, I've been talking about this, for literally 2 or 3 years, because it was very clear to anybody who sits down and studies it that the alternative energy grid, if I can call it that, or framework or infrastructure is simply not there. And all one has to do is look at Natural Resources Canada data. This isn't secret. Electricity, everyone says, well, just use electricity. It supplies 20%. All the electricity companies in Canada, that includes Ottawa Hydro, Ontario Hydro, Quebec Hydro, BC Hydro, provide 20% of the totality of energy used in Canada. This is Natural Resources Canada, by the way, data. I'm not making this up. It comes straight off the website of Natural Resources Canada in the Key Energy Facts book. And almost 80%, 75 to 80%, is provided by oil, natural gas, propane. And we developed that oil and gas infrastructural network over literally 150 years. The first pipelines were developed in the 1850s. So where am I going with this? Why I was warning against this is as more and more activists said, well, we got to, and one of the words I read frequently was, we've got to starve the beast being the metaphor for fossil fuels. Okay? So starving the beast in plain English means shutting down pipelines. It means shutting down refineries. It means shutting down the oil sands. It means shutting down the use of oil and natural gas and propane by people and businesses, of course. And that's okay. As a long-term goal, I get that. It's called decarbonization. We all support that, or many people support it. Okay? Where they are going completely off the rails, the Trudeau government and advocates in the environmental community and elsewhere are to say, let's shut down the oil, gas, or the fossil fuel infrastructure network before the alternative energy framework network infrastructure is fully in place or mostly in place. And I sure, because I get emails. Some people say, oh, you're exaggerating. All you have to do is look at the data. The Canadian Electricity Association says bluntly, the grid is not ready to distribute the gargantuan increase in electricity needed to displace the massive amounts of oil, natural gas, and propane we're using. So, where am I going with all this?
Okay.
What we are seeing right now in China, and I'm not saying it's caused by environmentalists or the Trudeau government, that's not my point. I'm saying if you want to know what the world's going to look like, or a country is going to look like, once you prematurely shut down or radically reduce the supply of oil, gas, propane, before the alternatives is ready, just look at what's going on in China. Look at what's going on in Germany. Look at what's going on in the UK, because that is our future. Unless some people come to their senses in the PMO, in the cabinet, in other ministries, and say, wait a minute, we cannot inflict socially engineered harm and suffering on millions of people by cutting them off so they can't heat their house when it's minus 25. And I want to remind everybody, because there's still people, even today, op-eds in the Globe and Mail and the Citizen drawing parallels between us and Europe. I've been to Europe over 100 times. Okay, Europe does not get like Canada. We go to minus 25 in January. And let's not just talk about Ottawa. Out west in the prairies, it goes to minus 40 regularly. And my brother, who lived for many years in Yellowknife, experienced minus 50, 60 degrees below centigrade. So my point being that it's all very fine to people to fly at 50,000 feet and say, we got to decarbonize, we got to get rid of fossil fuels, without thinking about the consequences to millions and millions and millions of people. A good example, Rob, I've looked this stats up, also from Stats Canada. Agriculture is only 2% of GDP, very small amount, but it uses 10% of the energy, and I'm talking diesel, natural gas, oil. So let's say we really restrict and starve the beast. That's meaning stop using or radically reduce oil, natural gas, propane, fossil fuels. This is not just going to cause us to freeze in the dark. It's going to have a huge impact on the food supply. It's going to have a huge impact. Every school that I know of is heated by natural gas. Every building at my university and every other university I know of is heated by natural gas. All the buildings at the Ottawa Hospital are heated by natural gas. So it's all very fine to talk about, well, you got to decarbonize. That's great. And, we got to reduce fossil fuels and shut down pipelines. Let's talk about what that means in plain English. It means we won't be able to heat our homes in the wintertime. It means we won't be able to heat our schools, because anyone who says, well, we'll just switch to alternatives, do not get it. They do not get it. The alternative energy framework infrastructure system is not in place. The chief engineer of Toyota, and Toyota's spending billions on alternative energy, testified only 2 or 3 weeks ago before the Congress, and he said, there is no way, it is physically impossible to go to all electric cars by 2030. He says the grid is not ready. So when you hear the environment minister or Trudeau or anyone else, Kathleen McKenna, when she was in cabinet, Catherine McKenna, going on, and we just got to just switch to cars, electric cars. The grid is not only ready, the charging stations are not only ready. So all we're going to do is crash the grid. If we did go out massively, Trudeau's talking about making it mandatory now to have electric cars by 2030 for most of us. The grid just simply can't supply it. California, just this summer, only 4, 6, 8 weeks ago, with 4% electric car ownership, when in the heat wave, we're saying, please don't charge your car. You're going to crash the grid because everyone's air conditioning their houses. That's how tight the grid is. Tight meaning it's close to capacity in every country, because we built it for the current supply. We didn't build it for a demand for electricity literally 300% greater than what it is right now. And it's going to take years to build the grid up and Canadian Electricity Association, and they're mostly government utilities, so you can't accuse them of being greedy private corporations. They have said we've got to rebuild the grid east-west because it runs right now north-south to the United States. And so we're not ready to decarbonize. That's where I'm going. We've got to have a 20, 30-year plan, and we got to start putting money in if these people are serious. I don't think Mr. Trudeau is. Because if he was really serious, he'd be saying, oh my God, we've got to spend billions, hundreds of billions to rebuild the grid. Those words haven't crossed his mouth or the environment minister's mouth. So they're not serious about it. They just want to have lots of, announcements, press conferences saying, look at what we're doing, and it's very spectacular, the media report on it. But it's not solving the problem, which is we don't have an alternative energy grid or infrastructure in place, and it's going to take years and hundreds of billions, or actually probably more. The U.S. estimates it'll be $5.5 trillion to completely decarbonize the U.S. And the UK has a new study out saying it's going to be £3.5 trillion, which is $5.5 trillion Canadian dollars, wow, to completely decarbonize UK. And UK is a postage stamp compared to Canada. I've driven from the bottom of the UK to the Scottish border in 6-7 hours.
Yes.
So my point is, I'm not saying we can't do it. This is not a stop and don't do anything. It's saying let's have a serious plan to rebuild, to build the alternative, but don't.
Yeah, but also you have to be honest with Canadians about the cost.
Oh, it's going to be
going to be enormous.
It's going to be in the trillions, not the billions, which is why we're not going to do it in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. We're going to do it over 20, 30 years.
Right.
And by the way,
like I said, we just had Dan McTeague on the radio, the former Liberal MP, Canadians for Affordable Energy, the gas guru, said gas is going to hit a record on Thursday in the city of Ottawa, right?
And it won't stop there, because remember the carbon tax.
It could just be the beginning. It's just going to be the beginning.
Right now is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's $40 or $50 a ton. It's scheduled to go to 170.
170,
That's 3 or 4 times, 3.5 times what it is now. So if you think gas at 140, it'll go to well over $2 a liter. As the carbon tax kicks in over the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Right. Okay. So look, when we come back, I want to. That was a great synopsis there. Thank you. The Paradise Papers. The whole system is rigged. It seems, Professor. There's one system for the rich and the another system for suckers like you and me.
Get
when
ready
we come
for
back,
a contrarian point of view.
Oh, surprise! Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business at Carleton, with us every Tuesday with his hot take on the big issues. This is City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion, and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types, curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March, when it came, I thought it was gonna last, a week, 2 weeks, through, I think it started off at 2 weeks. And I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started, and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Greenbank. And so it was just a continuum of what, I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now with a world where people want to quote unquote be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type, really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside. We got you.
Of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
I am not in the Paradise Papers. Professor, you didn't make it to the Paradise Papers. You're not in the Paradise Papers.
I am not.
Are you, Professor? Okay, all right.
Full disclosure, I don't have any bank accounts abroad or anywhere outside. In fact, I've only got one bank account here in Ottawa.
Okay.
And I don't have any assets around the world hidden because I don't have any assets.
And if I know you, you've probably had the same bank account at the same bank branch for 40 years or something.
It's amazing you said that. I've been in one branch for 33 years, at the same bank, meaning chain of bank. Since I was 10 years old, and my father opened a hockey account for me.
A hockey account.
So I've been with that bank for like 55 years.
Isn't that something?
No.
Well, look, the Paradise Papers will only add to this narrative that the whole economic system is rigged. That look, the wealthy can get away with whatever they can afford to get away with, and the rest of us are just being played for suckers.
Right.
Okay. The Montreal Canadiens, Loblaws, Dare Foods, Maple Leaf Foods, Molson, Saputo, Hydro-Quebec. Like, what is Hydro-Quebec doing? Like, it's a crown-owned corporation in Quebec. I guess they don't, maybe state-owned, I guess, in Quebec. But, Jacques Villeneuve, Elvis Stoico, all with these offshore accounts to totally minimize, if not eliminate, tax obligations. How can you possibly defend this?
I'm not going to defend cheating. I've never defended cheating or tax evasion. What I'm going to say is I'm going to put some facts on the table. What a horrible, radical idea. Empirical facts on the table.
Okay.
The media, I think, has done, and I don't normally condemn the media. I'm not Donald Trump, but I think the media has done an appalling job on this, and I'll explain why in very concrete terms so everybody understands.
This is like the most widespread investigative collaboration in journalism history,
Right.
probably.
I'm not talking about the leaking of the
you think
files.
it's all shoddy
No,
work,
no.
right?
No,
Yeah.
listen to me.
All right.
I didn't say the leaking of the files. I said the reporting. They're saying
reporting,
every
okay.
story I've read has said the following, breathlessly: secret bank accounts offshore. Everybody in Radio Land, listen to me very carefully.
Okay.
All bank accounts everywhere in Canada and the States are secret. When I worked in the bank 40 years ago, they drilled it into our heads almost every day of the week. Don't you dare ever reveal anything about a customer to anybody outside the branch. And if you do, you will be instantaneously terminated. Okay, bank accounts have always been secret, even for people on welfare or unemployment insurance. Everybody's bank account is secret, so they're reporting the fact that they have a secret bank account as somehow criminal. It is not criminal for your bank account to be secret. It's the law. Secondly, it is not illegal to have assets or bank accounts outside of Canada, as they are breathlessly suggesting and inferring that you are a criminal if you're a snowbird. You buy a property in Florida, that's it. They're crime, they're criminals, they're fraudsters. No, it is not. It is illegal to not declare your assets or income or bank accounts outside the country to the IRS if you're an American, or to the CRA if you're a Canadian. So what I'm saying is that it is an empirical question, not for the journalist, but for the CRA or the IRS to investigate every name on that list to find out, did they declare it to us, the tax boys, the tax people? And if they did declare it, no crime has been committed. And I would suggest to you, out of those 3,000 names, I'll bet you the large number of them are acting perfectly legally, and I hope that they sue the media for libel and slander as far as they can go.
Holy cow. Okay.
And
another part of it is, look, if we could somehow repatriate even a tiny portion of this income. Think of the health care we could afford. Think of the education that.
But are we going to start dictating now to people where they can put their asset, what kind of an asset? We're not the Soviet Union. We're not China. We're not President Xi. You may not buy a stereo because it's too loud. You may not buy a gasoline car because it's too powerful. You may not drive here because you're driving too many miles. Surely we're not at that state yet, the totalitarian state of Xi in China and Putin in Russia. And one more point on this.
Well, Putin in Russia loves offshore accounts, apparently. So.
One more point about, and to show you how shoddy the reporting was. It was breathlessly reported that Tony Blair, the former prime minister, has assets offshore that allowed him to reduce his taxes in the UK.
Yeah, but it's how he did it. We actually, I'm glad you we have a 30-second report because this was in one of our newscasts yesterday, and I said to David, let's isolate that. I'm going to play that listen, we're going to play you the report. Okay, I'm going to actually play you one of the reports, okay? You say the reports are shoddy and terrible and libelous.
He declared it on his taxes.
Oh, come on. No, come on. No, that's not what happened. I'm going to explain. Yeah. Listen to the report. Listen,
we're known as Teflon Tony here, but this particular issue may stick. Leaked documents showed Tony Blair and his wife didn't pay a penny of the $421,000 in tax when buying an $8.4 million London townhouse. That's because they bought the offshore firm that previously owned it, then closed that company after the transaction. The loophole legal, but the optics bad. Previously, Blair had stated publicly that the tax system is a haven of scams, perks, and financial district deals. Tom Rivers, ABC News.
Did you hear that?
Just made my point.
No. Come on.
Perfectly legal.
Oh, yeah, perfectly legal, but moral? That guy's supposed to be a big lefty labor leader. Come on.
I'm not defending. That's not my point.
Right.
If we don't like the Tax Act, or we don't like certain deductions in the Tax Act, then elect MPs and political parties that will change the Tax Act. But to suggest that he violated the law, which he did not, he did everything absolutely. You can bet that he had an army of accountants, highly trained tax accountants. That's what I'm trying to say to you. It's one thing to say, I don't like what you're doing. There's lots of things I don't like. I mean, I really have contempt for most of our counselors, okay, to be blunt. Okay? But that doesn't make them illegal. They're not illegal as counselors because Ian Lee doesn't like their hypocritical policies.
If you and I engage in a real estate transaction, one of us is going to have, in this country, to pay a land transfer tax, right? Land transfer tax. In Toronto, they have 2 land transfer taxes. They're hitting people with 2 land transfer taxes, right? So Tony Blair, this guy Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the UK, in the UK, they have it's basically like a land transfer tax. I guess it's called a stamp tax. They call it the stamp tax. If he had just bought the land and the building, he would have had to pay the land transfer tax, but he didn't. He bought the shell company instead and then dissolved the shell company so he wouldn't have to pay $400,000 in tax. Oh,
and perfectly legal. And one more point, Rob, because we're talking now about
it shouldn't be perfectly legal. I'll tell you that right now.
That's a separate question. Let's talk about tax avoidance versus tax evasion. And, okay, on a much smaller scale, every Canadian engages in tax avoidance. When you deduct your $1,000 or your $3,000 or whatever personal exemption on your tax return, that is tax avoidance. When you deduct money for a contribution to an RSP, that is tax avoidance. Those are called tax expenditures by Finance Canada, and they publish an annual report of all the, quote, lost income, tax revenues, from tax deductions. And it's $200 billion. Now, a lot of them are there because of Canadians lobbying over the years for all the different deductions in the Tax Act. You know, it could be for books or for sports.
And politicians to appeal to certain segments of the electorate, they keep adding to the number of tax exemptions.
Pogo said, we have met the enemy, and it is us.
All right. Okay.
We are the enemy. They are all those tax deductions, so-called loopholes, tax deductions, tax expenditures. They're in the Tax Act because some of us demanded them, and some politicians went and put them there. And so we are, and I'm not defending Tony Blair. If that's the law of the land, that's the law of the land. If you don't like the law of the land, you Brits, then go change the Tax Act. That's all.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for this week. Provocative as always.
Okay.
Provocative. Not necessarily right all the time, but provocative nonetheless. Thank you. Bye-bye, Professor.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, that was good. Fun. Professor Ian Lee, he wakes me right up. He's with the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. So coming up, local issues. I want to talk about the ongoing investigation into the Panda Game riot in Sandy Hill. Some questions about that. Questions about the future of light rail. The future site of the civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital. Really going to focus on some big local issues during the Talkback Hour, right after the news on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 13 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The province's top doctor has announced a COVID testing program for certain schools.
The rapid testing rollout will indeed be targeting areas of Ontario where COVID-19 is spreading the most. This would not be a broad-based program. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, saying that rapid test kits will be made available for use in specific schools and daycares at the request of local health units. Dr. Moore says the testing could catch asymptomatic cases before they have a chance to spread in school, which can avoid closing down schools. This program will be voluntary. Students with a positive rapid test would then be sent to isolate, as well as going to a clinic for a lab-based test. Right now, there are 5 Ontario schools that are closed with outbreaks, but Dr. Moore also insisting schools remain safe in Ontario and at relatively low risk of virus spread compared to the community. I'm Kevin Meisner.
Now, the National Capital Commission is honoring frontline workers who have stepped up in the fight against COVID. The NCC dedicating a park bench in Majors Hill Park to those workers in recognition of their efforts during the pandemic. As for today's numbers, the province just releasing 429 more cases of COVID-19 in Ontario. These numbers come from just over 25,400 tests. Now, 47 of these positive cases are in Ottawa. There are 3 in Eastern Ontario's health unit, but no new cases today in either Renfrew or in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. City News time, 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some late day clearing for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls, 18 for the high today, and just a few clouds tonight, the low near 8 degrees. Tomorrow, lots of sunshine and quite mild, up to 21. For today, the high, 18.
And right now in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 13 degrees. A smaller Conservative caucus gathering in the city today. Leader Aaron O'Toole facing his MPs for the first time since the federal election. A member of the party's National Council from Ontario launched an online petition to collect signatures from Conservatives who want to vote on O'Toole's leadership earlier than the currently scheduled review in 2023. 119 MPs will decide whether they want the power to trigger a leadership review. That requires a written notice backed by 20% of the caucus. Thanksgiving just days away now. It will mark the first big holiday during a pandemic when Ontarians can actually gather with friends and families inside their homes. It is allowed, but will people be doing that? Here is Laura Carney.
It seems the big question leading into Thanksgiving this year won't be who's bringing what, but rather who's vaccinated. A public health researcher at Brown University tells the CBC this isn't about making Thanksgiving political. It's a matter of infection control. Adding just one unvaccinated family member can put a lot of people at risk at the gathering, especially if there are children or older people there. The public health researcher also says people shouldn't hesitate to set personal boundaries around what they feel is COVID safe and what isn't. Last week, the province's top doctor said people planning to welcome guests into their homes for the holiday should plan accordingly. Dr. Kieran Moore also said it's fair to ask if someone's been vaccinated. He also suggested symptom screening and masking if there is a mixing of immunized and non-immunized people. I'm Laura Carney.
City News Time, 10:04. The head of France's Catholic Bishops' Conference is asking for forgiveness from an estimated 330,000 victims of child sexual abuse by priests and other authority figures. A report out is France's first major accounting of what has been happening worldwide. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Focusing on local issues here during the Talkback Hour. Three big ones for you. You can comment on one, on two, on all three. Love to hear from you. The phone number is 750-1310, 613-750-1310. On the Panda Game riot in Sandy Hill and the fallout and the investigation, the police have released pictures of persons of interest, several people in those pictures there. What would you do if you recognized someone in those pictures? What would you do? What would you do if you recognized someone in those pictures? Would you call the police and say, I know that guy. His name is, and rat them out. Basically, would you rat them out? Okay, at 750-1310. Would you call that person and say, hey, look, this looks a lot like you. I think you should call the police. Or would you do nothing? Would you do nothing? Okay, just curious. 750-1310, 750-1310. The person of interest photos, persons of interest photos. What would you do? Okay, 750-1310. There is still plenty of opposition to the proposed location for the new civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital. This was the compromise site. Okay, this was the compromise site after the original proposed location across the street from the current civic campus on the farm was rejected by the newly elected Liberal government of the day in all its wisdom. Okay. Now many people are opposed to this second location. So what should happen to this plan for the new campus of the Civic? Should we push ahead with the plan? Okay. Ignore the NIMBYism and push ahead. Move this plan forward. Okay. Should we cancel this plan and go back to the original plan and put the new civic campus right across the street from the old civic campus, like we were going to do all along? Should we cancel this plan and start all over again? We're not going to put it on the farm. We're not going to put it here. we're going to look for a totally new site. Or should we cancel this plan and, you know what, give the $2.8 billion in healthcare money to another city that will actually build a hospital in my lifetime? And on light rail. Okay, on light rail. Yeah, it's another down day for the Confederation Line, Light Rail Phase 1. There is no Light Rail Phase 1 operating today. Again, what is this, 16 days in a row or something like that? I believe day 16. Another down day. There is no timeline for when light rail will be up and running again. Phase 2, in the meantime, is well under construction right now. Look around the city. The construction's everywhere. That's not the case for Phase 3. Phase 3 is just an idea in a bunch of people's heads right now. And there's no funding commitment. And this is the biggest part of the story. There's still no funding commitment from the provincial government, something that was noted by Mayor Watson yesterday when he was on City News with my colleague Sam LaPrade. Okay, in order for this, the city would not put any money into Phase 3. The city says in order to build Phase 3, it has to be 50-50. Federal government, provincial government. 50% of the bill has to be paid, covered by the provincial government, which would be $2.5 billion. There is no commitment right now from the provincial government. The mayor is going to lobby the premier for it. You can bet that. He said that yesterday on City News. Roll tape there.
We haven't got that same commitment, but we will work with the premier. As you know, he was the one that ended up announcing the funding for Phase 2 in person. So I look forward to having that conversation with the premier, because we need the provincial and the federal government, because they're obviously going to be vital for our success in terms of moving that project forward.
Okay, vital, right? Right. So should the Ford government make that commitment and commit $2.5 billion to Phase 3? It will be under a lot of pressure. It will be, I think the election campaign is coming up. There will be a lot of pressure on Doug Ford to say, look, a great pre-election goodie would be to announce $2.5 billion for Phase 3 of light rail in the city of Ottawa. Should Doug Ford commit to doing that? Or should Doug Ford be saying, we are not going to commit to funding Phase 3 of light rail until the city of Ottawa figures out what is going wrong with Phase 1 of light rail? What would be your preference there? Okay, 750-1310, 750-1310, okay? You don't have to comment on all three. I'm hoping one of them strikes your fancy and are of interest to you this morning at 750-1310. To Greeley first, this morning on the Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour. Paul in Greeley, you're on City News.
Hey, hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Paul.
Yeah, so I heard your comment saying about the riot in Sandy Hook for the Panda Games, that it was ratting potentially.
Yes.
And as a retired Mountie,
okay,
it's not ratting.
Okay.
It's simply your civic duty.
Your civic duty. Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. I'm using that just as like slang. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
it's just slang. Okay. That's what
I take it that way. But it is definitely your civic duty. It's like the Vancouver riots when that happened during the Olympics.
Okay.
And the police released the pictures, and eventually they identified everybody, and they started giving out jail sentences.
Okay.
As a mandatory minimum.
Right.
If you're out there doing damage to other people's property or city property, I hope you get criminally charged, and it follows you for a long time.
Oh, really? Okay. You're taking it very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you would encourage people, if they recognize the men in those pictures, call the police and identify them. That
men
it's
or
their men or women. Okay. I believe it's all men. Is it not, David? I looked through them. I think it's all men, but I'm open to be. I looked through them. I didn't see any women, but nevertheless. Okay, fair enough. Did you want to weigh in on anything else, sir?
No.
No, just that. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Paul?
There's ways to do it, Rob, and you can call Crime Stoppers if you're worried.
Can call Crime Stoppers, sure. Yep, absolutely.
And then you don't have to have your name involved, and you just let it whatever happens.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Paul says it's your civic duty if you recognize people in those photos. You should be calling the authorities. Darlene in Nepean. Good morning, Darlene.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Darlene.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to speak about the civic hospital.
Yes.
Well, first of all, we don't have any leadership, and that was clearly shown to me anyways during the last election. They don't want to make any decisions, so they make halfway decisions or no decisions, and we have complete chaos in just about every area of our life.
Okay. Well, what I want to get at, I'm very specific here, okay?
When I'm going to be specific too.
All right.
All started, it was decided, okay, with the John Carling building, that's where it was going to go. The John Carling building was torn down.
That's right.
It's all ready to go. Then a bunch of rich, privileged people in the civic hospital area started protesting because basically they didn't want a four-story parking garage.
Parking garage, yeah.
Blocking their view of Dow's Lake.
Yes.
And so people who need and are lucky enough to get health care, they're denied it because of a group of people who don't want their view of Dow's Lake blocked. Tough.
So would your preference be to continue pushing ahead with this plan?
Go ahead with it.
It's been in the works for years now. There is a funding commitment here, $2.8 billion. Okay. Stick with it. Stick with it. Is that what you would say, Darlene?
And the CEO, Cameron Love,
yes,
he was the one that suggested that they have, the above ground parking because it would save
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions, like $300 million. And thank you, Darlene. And the provincial government doesn't pay for parking infrastructure. So if you want to bury the parking, the city would have to come up with $300 million on top of whatever it is. The fundraising goal is astronomical as it is for that new civic campus. It's like $500 or $700 million that needs to be raised locally. Can't really afford an underground parking garage, I don't think. We'll be right back. It's the Talk Back Hour. We're off to a great start so far. It's 750-1310 on the Talk Back Hour on City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, Record Center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad say, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats that every day. Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people say, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hindenburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I'm going, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store is about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed. And essentially get that message out. I prefer if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. Y'all come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
On the Panda Game riot in Sandy Hill, police have released pictures of persons of interest. Ottawa.citynews.ca. We have them all there, okay? Go look at them. But I want to know, what would you do if you recognize someone in those pictures? Would you call the police and identify them? Would you call that person and encourage them to call the police on themselves? Or would you do nothing? Would you do nothing? Still lots of opposition to the proposed location for the civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital, what I call the compromise site. Okay? The Sir John Carling building demolished. This is the compromise site. What should we do as a community, given all the questions about this hospital on that site? Should we push ahead with this plan? Should we cancel this plan, go back to the original plan, put it across the street from the current civic campus? Should we cancel this plan, start all over, find a totally new site, or just cancel it and forget that we're ever going to build a new hospital? In my lifetime, in this city. And Doug Ford is going to be under a lot of pressure, especially come election time, to give out the election goodies, to make an announcement about phase 3 for light rail. I think it'd be about $2.5 billion funding commitment for phase 3. Should he make that commitment? Or should he say, I'm not going to commit to funding phase 3 for light rail in Ottawa until you actually figure out and straighten out whatever is plaguing phase 1 of light rail? David in the West End. Dave.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Rob, don't worry about the Civic Hospital. The next government's going to move it again.
I hope not. But what should we do, Dave? What should we do?
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what we should do? We should close the loopholes, just the way the professor said. Put your thinking cap on. You almost didn't disagree with him there a couple of times. And, right is right and wrong is wrong. Okay, they should have had the best excuse in the world to move it from where the John Baird
and Jack Hitz were originally going to put it. Yeah. Okay.
They had no reason in the world to move it other than it was the other government, and that's what they wanted to do. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So
that's basically it. Yes.
That's basically it, exactly. Had they had a good excuse, imagine they're going to tear down a building to put up a building.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So should we stick with it then? Stick with it?
Yes.
Okay, keep going. Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Now, the riots.
Yes, the riot, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a riot.
Let's say if you were looking through those pictures today and you saw somebody you knew, a neighbor down the hall, neighbor down the street, maybe grandson or something, what would you call the police on them?
Well, that's a question because they go before a judge and nothing's going to happen anyway.
Well, they're not described as suspects. They're just persons of interest. Okay, the police just want to talk to them.
I'm old enough to remember when looters were shot.
Okay, well, nobody's going to get shot.
Dave, I watched TV last night. Two guys went into a high-end drugstore and were loading green garbage bags with stuff off the shelf, just scooping it into the bags.
and 4 or 5 people standing around watching them. And when they went out the door, they waved goodbye.
Like, for example, we had a retired RCMP officer says it's your civic duty to call the police if you recognize somebody in those pictures.
Exactly.
Do you? Okay, all right, you agree with that then. Okay,
certainly.
so look, phase 3 of light rail. My phones are jammed this morning, Dave. That's why I'm kind of moving things along here.
Okay.
Dave,
I'm
phase
never
3.
going to ride it.
You're never going to ride
I made
it?
a promise never to get on that thing.
Okay.
It also, we had the most perfect bus plan between Lowell Green and his buddy there,
Andy Hayden.
Yeah. It would have worked perfectly. I used to ride streetcars in Ottawa. Right. Mayor Whitten took them out. Can you imagine?
Well, in fact, the streetcars that we had in Ottawa went further into the West End than this train goes into the West End right now, Dave.
They went into Britannia Park.
Went into Britannia Park. Yes, you're absolutely right, Dave.
Field Road into Rockcliffe Park.
Yeah, you're right, Dave. Dave, I gotta go. We're jammed today. Okay, 750-1310. I'm kind of keeping everybody focused here, okay? Or we're going to wander off in all kinds of directions, and I don't want to do that. Barry in Ottawa, you're on City News. Barry.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, Barry. On the Civic, Barry, should we stick with the plan we have been working on here recently, this compromise site?
I think it should be the original plan, Rob.
All right.
I think that they will, if they put it right across from the Civic where it is now, they wouldn't need to build an expensive underground garage. They could pave a parking lot there, within 100 acres or so. It's still not going to make that big a dent in all the cornfields that the experimental farm has. There's a massive area that they grow corn between Fallowfield Road and Hunt Club Road out in the West End.
Yes, yeah.
And most of that corn, I believe, is sold off as cash crop to whoever harvests it, whoever's got a contract with them. Some of it might be kept for research and experimentation for methanol or whatever, but no, I think they should stick with the original plan, and I think the government, instead of being creating a fiasco with that other building being torn down and stuff like that, and I don't think our government should be allowed to just turn around and spite the previous government's decision. I think it should come down to a referendum amongst the people of Ottawa where they want it. And like I say, with the paid parking lot on the ground, there's lots of room there to make a parking lot without going underground. And I just think...
All right. Okay. Now, on light rail, phase 3 for light rail, which would get you further into Canada, out to Barrhaven, Stittsville, okay? Just to get to Barrhaven, $3 billion, okay? Just to get to Barrhaven, $3 billion. But it's not going to be built with at least $2 billion in money from the provincial government. The federal government has made its commitment to phase 3. Should the Ford government make the same commitment?
Well, maybe only if Ottawa shows that they're going to go to some kind of rail car that's not going to keep falling apart. I was going to suggest.
Okay. Yeah.
I was living out in Edmonton in the late 70s, early 80s when they put their LRT in, and most of it's above ground. And it's running in 40 below weather. And
yes, they do get winter in Edmonton, from what I hear.
I never remember big shutdowns or wheels falling off or wheels going flat or brakes failing. They might have had some problems there. That was 40 years ago. I don't remember all of them.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good point that you make. Yeah, they do. They have light rail systems all over the world. They do have light rail systems in Canadian cities with northerly climates, but ours is just trouble-plagued. Not really the question, though. Angela, you're on City News. Angela, good morning. Oh, sorry. That's my fault, Angela. I didn't press the right button. Good morning, Angela. You're on City News. There we go.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes.
I used to work on the experimental farm in the Sir John Carling building, and that building is on a fault line. And every spring, there was construction to rectify the shift. So I don't understand why they're building the hospital there. They should have left it on the flat land across the street from the current Civic Hospital.
Right.
So you have the Friends of the Farm that didn't want it where it was on flat land. You have the people who want the greenery kept to where it's going.
Right.
So if you look at the land across the street from the Civic Hospital, there are only trees around the perimeter. They would have to clear cut a minimal amount of trees which they used for windbreak. So I really don't understand. And what scenery are you detracting from on flat land? It's research land. Whereas where they're going to build it right now, you've got Dow's Lake, you got, is it Queen Margaret Park or whatever it's called, with all this greenery, and they want to build a parking garage as well. It boggles the mind.
Okay, so what should we do then?
Put it back across
Put
the
it
street
back.
from the
Okay,
farm.
put it
it's
back.
Flat
Okay.
land.
All right, gotcha, Angela.
And is it not on a fault line? You're fine.
Okay. Well, I don't know. The people talk about this fault line. Surely, if there's a fault line where the Sir John Carling building is, there's got to be a fault line all around there, then, right?
Well, sure, but if
If the
line.
big one hits the Sir John Carling building, it's not like the a building at the experimental farm is going to be spared from any devastation.
No. I agree with you, but the Sir John Carling building was built on the line, so is that they're building the hospital in the same place, right?
Yes, they are.
So if the fault line in the spring, if the shift in the land happens, is the new hospital going to shift, and then they'd have to fix it?
Okay. Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Put it back. Put it back to where it was supposed to go in the first place. Rob Snow Talkback Hour, halftime already. Holy smokes, this is City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees. It's 14 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news this hour. Rapid testing for certain schools for COVID-19. Individual health units in Ontario will make that request based on numbers in their communities. The test will be administered in those areas that have a high incidence of COVID-19. Now, the province is reporting an additional 429 cases of COVID today province-wide. There are also 3 deaths. Of those new cases, 47 are in Ottawa, 3 in Eastern Ontario. No new cases today in either Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, or the Renfrew County District Health Unit. Federal Conservative MPs will be deciding today whether to put Erin O'Toole's leadership to a vote. While that is scheduled to happen not until 2023, following the federal election when written notice is given and 20% of MPs elected from that party agree, a leadership review could be triggered. The National Capital Commission Board of Directors has approved the new Civic Development Master Site Plan that is scheduled to open in 2028. This healthcare facility will be among the largest and most advanced in Canada. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Talking about the Panda Game riot, the Civic Campus Hospital project, and Phase 3 of Light Rail. Here on the Talkback Hour, all local issues, the out-of-control party. 2,000 drunken students descend on Sandy Hill, cause mayhem and chaos, and as you know, there's a police investigation underway. We have a big write-up about that at City News, ottawa.citynews.ca, and there's a link to the update from the Ottawa Police. All the pictures of all the persons of interest are there. And it looks like these little devils, these persons of interest, the police seem to be focused on them because it looks to me like they're the ones involved in tipping over that car. Looks like that's where the police are focusing their efforts right now. So my question is, if you recognize someone in that picture, what would you do? Would you call the police? Even if it was a friend, what if it was a family member? Would you call the police and say, hey, I know who that person is. That person's name is such and such and such and such. Okay. Would you call that person? And if so, what would you say? Would you say to that person, hey, saw your picture there. You should probably go down and talk to the police. You're a person of interest. Do the right thing and go talk to the police. As one of our previous callers says, it's your civic duty. I don't think it's going to be very hard to identify some of these people. David, what do you think? Their faces are right there. Smiling for the camera, right? Like, smile for your close-up. Maybe with some of the others a little more difficult. Some of the pictures are a little bit on the fuzzy side, or their backs are turned to the camera. But I would suspect some of these party animals have already been identified. Hey, that's your face, and that's you tipping over a car Saturday night in Sandy Hill. What would you do? What would you do? I don't recognize anyone, but what would you do? I'll tell you what, my father was very, very strict. And if he saw me in the newspaper, saw my picture, like that's me on top of the car, he would drive me to the police station himself. And he would say, Constable, here is my son, and you can keep him as long as you need him. Okay. And look, the new civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital, what are we supposed to do now? Should we keep pushing ahead with this plan, go back to the original plan, find a totally new spot, or just forget about it? Just forget about it. Okay. Give the money to Thunder Bay. Give it to Kenora. Maybe they could build a hospital. We can't obviously build a hospital. And on Phase 3 of Light Rail, there is no funding commitment for Phase 3 of Light Rail from the provincial government. The federal government under Trudeau says, we'll give you $2 or $3 billion. The Ford government hasn't said that yet. Should the Ford government decline to make that funding commitment until the City of Ottawa can figure out what is wrong with Phase 1 of Light Rail? Angelo in Nepean. Good morning, Angelo.
Buongiorno, Roberto. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, Angelo. Thank you.
I'm going to just say something quick. I don't think the Premier should give Jim Watson and his cronies on council another $2.5 billion to play around with until they figure out what's going on with
Phase 1.
The LRT. Phase 1. And since they gave them all that money to begin with, I wouldn't take a chance with Mr. Watson again, because who knows what's going to happen.
All right. Angelo, thank you. Thank you for your call, sir, on Light Rail. Yep, you too. Yep. Mark in Ottawa South, you're on City News. On the Civic Campus, should we stick with this plan? Mark, what do you think? What should we do now?
Move it back to the original location, simply because that was always the best place for it to go in terms of medical efficiency. There were two mistakes here. Number one, there was the mistake of a particular Liberal politician to take up opposition to that location. And number two, there was a mistake of other Liberal politicians to not correct the first mistake. Instead, to go for a face-saving compromise, which wasn't as good as the original location.
Right.
Now, Catherine McKenna, she was never Climate Barbie, no.
No.
But she
I
was
never called her
Hospital
that.
Hazel.
Okay, Hospital Hazel. Okay, yeah.
And when I spoke about this subject with you on September 3rd, I got one date wrong, and I'd like to correct myself.
Okay.
On November 24th of 2016, the National Capital Commission announced its recommendation of Tunney's Pasture as a site for the new hospital. And Environment Minister McKenna applauded the decision and posted positive comments on her website. The following Tuesday, the Ottawa Hospital Board of Governors announced their unanimous rejection of the Tunney's Pasture site.
Right.
And in a joint statement, local Liberal MPPs Bob Chiarelli, Yasser Naqvi, John Fraser, Marie-France Lalonde, and Nathalie Desrosiers expressed their support for the hospital board's decision.
Right.
It's what happened in the next 72 hours I'd like to know about. You see, it was on Friday, December 2nd, that there was the press conference at Ottawa City
At Ottawa City Hall, yeah.
Where all these Liberal politicians gathered, including Catherine McKenna, who stood there staring uncomfortably, and they announced, and Dr. Kitts was there, a compromise site of the Sir John Carling site. What I'd like to know is, Dr. Kitts' willingness to go along with this compromise, is there a story behind that? Did these Liberal politicians say to him, look, Kitts, this is as close as you're going to get to the original site?
Right.
I mean,
good question.
Sir John Carling is better than Tunney's Pasture would have been, but not as good as the original site.
Yeah.
And the other question is, the fact that they chose Sir John Carling instead of the original site, can they give me a reason other than they didn't want to admit that a Conservative politician had been right?
Did something right, yeah.
Liberal politician had been wrong?
Yeah. Very good question. Very good questions, Mark. Man, oh man, is like encyclopedic knowledge of it. I mean, what a typical Ottawa mess this is turning out to be. I mean, no wonder LeBreton Flats has been in the state it has been in 60-odd years. When it comes to the civic saga, we should remember, this is a hospital, right? We're not building a shopping center. It's not a proposed shopping center or a proposed amusement park or a proposed aquarium or a hockey arena or something. It's a hospital, and yet at the planning committee, at every city committee, truth be told, whenever this comes up, they're just totally against it. Brand new hospital, just totally against it. Against a parking garage, against the loss of trees. Loss of human life from an outdated hospital. No, loss of trees. Trees good, humans bad. They're still pushing Tunney's Pasture. Look, Tunney's Pasture was never, ever going to be the site of this hospital, okay? And makes absolutely no sense for a city that is growing rapidly to the south. And it makes no sense at all to put a hospital complex at the northernmost part of the city, given our growth pattern. And the federal government, I would point out to the people who are still pitching Tunney's Pasture, like Clive Doucette, who has always been wrong on the future of the hospital. The federal government, Clive, has a master plan for Tunney's Pasture, and it does not include a hospital. It does include 4,000 residential housing units. It does include office space for 25,000 federal government workers. But it is not going to be the site for the new hospital. Stop it with your misinformation campaign. $2.8 billion hospital. And you know what? It's probably more than that. That was the estimate several years ago when the funding commitment was actually made. Okay? It is quite likely the cost of that has probably gone up by $1 billion. Just given the rising cost of materials and labor for a project that size. So, but anyway, I'll get carried away and blood pressure and Everything else, James, calm me down. Yeah. Walk me back from the edge, James. Okay. All right.
Well, I'll shift course a little bit to the Panda game.
Panda, yes, the Panda riot. What would you do if, you're leafing through these persons of interest. The police say, we're looking for these people. We want to speak with these people. And you recognize one of them. What would you do?
Knock them out faster than a toad can pee.
You would? Okay. You would? Okay.
And here's the reasoning. What's the second favorite hobby for university students? Other than binge drinking and mayhem, their second favorite hobby is canceling people. They love cancel culture. If you told an off-color joke 25 years ago, they'll have you crucified for it.
Right.
So am I supposed to feel bad for somebody who flipped a car, took a dump in someone's driveway when they have to face the music? Nah.
No. Okay. All right. Karma, you're saying, James. Karma. Okay.
Quite precisely.
All right. Very good. Yeah. You've been canceled. You're canceled because of your Panda mayhem.
They do love canceling people. They really do.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. On light rail this morning, Jerry in Ottawa. Jerry, you're on City News.
How you doing, sir?
Hanging in there, Jerry. How about you?
Well, we all have to hang in there. We don't have a choice.
Yep.
The LRT. Now,
the LRT, yes.
What gets to me is they're spending billions of dollars, and right now we're still having problems with this LRT.
Yes.
I was taking LRT last year, and I got tired of all these problems, so I bought myself a car. Now I'm using my car to go to work. I don't have a choice. And now, look, it's still down.
Yeah.
The problem is, stop spending all the billions of dollars there. Look at the homeless people that's going on right now. Like, let's spend money on housing and helping people around. If we start helping everybody, then everybody will be happy, and then maybe we can start working on something that will make sense. You know what I'm like? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand totally. This would be, for example, I believe, like just for the Barhaven connection is just $3 billion, and then get it further out into Canada is almost another $2 billion, $5 billion. How much affordable housing could you build with $5 billion?
A lot of money.
Or drug rehabilitation programs, or anything else like that.
On top of that, with the hospital, Civic Hospital, just put it where the same location where they are now. It makes sense. You got the elderly that know the area pretty well. Everybody knows that area, so it's just across the street. What's the big deal? I mean, they've got the property to do it. They can just do it. Like, what's the problem? Spend money on the hospitals and help people, and then work on your stupid LRT that I call it. So, anyway, that's
all right, Jerry. Thank you. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, buddy. 10:45. Be right back. Talk back hour. Busy one today. One phone line available. We'll get to all your calls before the 11 o'clock news here on City News.
It started out with a small outdoor booth in what was called Artist Alley, which is actually the area just outside our store on William Street, where for a couple of years we sold our jewelry directly on the street. And then we slowly evolved to having an indoor location in this building, 55 Borrowed Market Square. We then moved to another location in Place de Ville, and then moved back down here on Dalhousie Street at Ear Gear in the 90s. And then back into this building again in 2000 as a collection. I do a collection of jewelry called Cirque that's mainly beaded work with a combination of semi-precious and vintage beads. And then she does a hat collection called Fanfreluche that's all cut and sewn hats in a variety of fabrics and for all of the seasons of the year. We've curated and sourced the artisans that we represent in a lot of different ways over the years since it's been, since 1985. Some people come to us since we're known, and other artisans that we represent might recommend that they come and see us. Some people we find at craft shows, or we see their work, somebody wears it in, and we go and track it down and bring it. And then some people, interestingly, are with us in one medium, and then sometimes they evolve to another. They're all Canadian and mainly local. With the roughly 50 people that we have, I'd say more than half of those are Ottawa-Gatineau, and then the rest are from other cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. If you can afford it, go to a small business and spend some money. It's lovely when you come in and, give me a pep talk and tell me how much you love this place and you've been coming here for years. But if you can afford it, please spend some money too, because all the pep talks in the world are not going to pay my rent, which is still full rent even when we're closed. Then secondly, if you can't afford to spend money, follow the businesses that you want to support on social media. Go to their Instagram, go to their Facebook, follow their Twitter, and then retweet, share their Facebook page, like and comment. Because if you can't afford to, as many of us can't right now, to do extra expenditures, doing all of those little things like that will raise the visibility of those small businesses and hopefully for them result in some online or curbside or other business for them.
Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
I'd just like to remind you, just a few details. Phase 3, don't forget, Phase 3 of light rail is the plan for Barrhaven, Stittsville, and further west into Canada. I believe the estimate is it's north of $4 billion. It's probably closer to $5, something like $4.8 billion. Construction wouldn't begin at least 2024, 2025. Say it takes another 3-4 years. You're talking late 2020s. Okay. I think it's about $3 billion for the Barrhaven line and another. These are the 2021 estimates, okay? 2021 dollars. And then another $1.8 billion to get it a little more out to the west in Canada. The Trudeau Liberals said during the election campaign, so did the Conservative Party, by the way, we're in. Count us as a funding partner. But the Ford government is not committed yet. Should it be? Should it be? Because, and I would remind you, this would not be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The plan is 50-50, which is great for the city if they could somehow pull that off, if Mayor Watson could pull that off. No city money. And just have the feds and the province fund Phase 3 for us. But you'd be talking about probably, 2.3, 2.4, maybe more, billion dollars from the Ontario government. This is what Jim Watson was with Sam LaPrade yesterday on the Sam LaPrade show, saying he hopes that Doug Ford will announce that he's committed to funding Phase 3. Go ahead.
We haven't got that same commitment, but we will work with the Premier. As you know, he was the one that ended up announcing the funding for Phase 2 in person. So I look forward to having that conversation with the Premier because we need the provincial and the federal government because they're obviously going to be vital for our success in terms of moving that project forward.
Okay. Now, I've heard it that Doug Ford should not put $1 of Ontario's taxpayers' money into Phase 3 of light rail until we figure out what the heck is going on with Phase 1 of light rail. Okay? Phase 1 is a mess right now. Phase 2, we're building it. But we haven't put a shovel in the ground yet for Phase 3. These are just plans on maps right now. But Doug Ford is going to be in election campaign mode soon, and he's going to be under pressure to, give out the pre-election goodies. This would be the biggest one for Ottawa, by far, if he were to announce it. I am committed to $2 billion for light rail. But should he be committed? Or should anybody who makes that kind of commitment be committed? If you know what I mean. Yes, see what I did there? Albert in Canada. In Canada, where they might get light rail by the late 2020s. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah,
I just want to update my location. My location is actually Ottawa now. I had to make some decisions in the last 6 months, and I'm in Ottawa. But
you moved from Canada to Ottawa.
That's right.
We're all one big happy family now. We're post-amalgamation now.
Well, you know what? I spent my first 20 years in growing up on Preston Street, my friend.
Okay.
So I'm closer to home.
Good for you.
I'm calling you about the hospital, Rob, and it's such a sad situation that here we are all this time, and nothing really moved too fast. But the one thing that I'm concerned about for the new hospital, I think the first location across from the hospital at the experimental farm was the perfect location because the Civic Hospital is a main hub all the way up to Pembroke for major cases like heart, patients coming in for heart emergencies or blood transfusions. That if you got
it's a trauma center as well. It's a trauma center, regional trauma center, right? So
so what I'm getting at is speed and the accessibility to get to and unload a patient is paramount. And with the location being across from the Civic, we have Carleton Avenue, we have Parkdale exits going east and west. We have the Heart Institute, the hospital, and I'm not sure what they're doing with the old building, but if they were to put a tunnel underneath Carleton Avenue as a tunnel way for accessibility from the old to the new, what they could do also is they can use that old garage that's sitting there and use the tunnel for getting people into the new hospital, but also in the future use that tunnel to use the old hospital for whatever is necessary for whether it's research or long-term care stuff. But anyway, my point is this: the need for speed to get these people unloaded is paramount, and I don't think you're going to get that by Dow's Lake. It's just not accessible.
Okay, I got you, Albert. I got you. You want it back. You want to kind of hit the reset button and go back to the original location. Yeah, I understand. It's a very popular sentiment today. I don't know if that's in the cards. I'm right there with you, though, everybody who thinks we really made a mess of that one. David in Lowertown, you're on City News. David.
Yeah, Rob, just want to make two quick points regarding the panic game. According to witnesses, the police were on the scene and they stood there and watched while the destruction of property took place and did nothing about it. So why would they send out pictures the next day when they were alive and saw it happening?
Okay.
Why didn't? I mean,
I don't know. Public pressure, maybe public pressure. I don't know. I don't know.
If it's something they feel that's not, they can't handle it. Why not they do what they used to do? You call out the cops in the riot gear and you disperse the crowd with tear gas or pepper spray, and then it's done. It's over.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And the last part is I don't think they should be going after the provincial government for money for Phase 3. I think they should go after the government for money for a new Phase 1.
For a new Phase 1. Yeah, okay. Great point, David. Yeah, thank you. I like that little twist at the end there. That was good. In Stittsville, where light rail is also a distant dream. Diane, good morning.
Okay, Rob.
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you. The University of Ottawa, all of those are educated students. To get in there, most of them have to have over 80%. I talked to David about the hockey team that were in North Bay or Sudbury, and they all were punished. Even a student who was part of the hockey team who wasn't even there, they got off because of the top lawyers in Ottawa. So I don't want this to be a court case. We lose. I want all of those students expelled immediately. They know who they are. I agree with your last caller. They could have brought in water cannons or something. This should not be allowed. 2,000 people together. It's supposed to be 100% with COVID. together.
Right.
So,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
I want to add this. There was a player in that hockey team who wasn't even there. He did not get his athletic awards. Neither did the rest of them. They were all out of playing hockey. So get the ones... It's not everybody's punished. Punish the ones that should be punished out of school.
Okay, yeah, I guess the question is, let's say you're going through those pictures today and you recognize somebody. What would you do? Would you call the police?
I think they already know who they are.
You think they already know?
I do. Okay, thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Diane.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Yeah, very good. That's it. At a time. Wow, that was a great hour. Very interesting discussion. I'm glad you're following all those local issues. They will be with us for quite some time, I believe. Coming up next, we'll turn our attention to conservative leadership politics with Aaron O'Toole facing his critics this morning here in Ottawa. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 14 degrees, 13 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Rapid testing for COVID-19 coming to certain schools in certain areas. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner with the details.
This won't be a broad-based program, instead targeting specific areas where the risk of COVID-19 spread is the greatest. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, says it'll be up to local public health units to determine where the testing should be done.
Where the public health unit has identified a need for rapid antigen screening in schools or childcare settings, tests will become available. Parents will be able to choose.
Dr. Moore calls this another tool to help keep schools open. He believes students remain safe in the classroom.
And we haven't seen a significant amount of ongoing transmission.
The testing will be for unvaccinated students who are not showing symptoms. A student with a positive rapid test would be sent to a clinic for a lab-based test and be told to isolate. Right now, school-aged children make up about 25% of the new COVID cases in Ontario. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
Now, the province is reporting an additional 429 cases of COVID-19 today, along with 3 more deaths. The cases numbers are 1.8% of over 25,400 tests that were completed. Now, Ottawa has 47 new cases, according to the province, 3 more in eastern Ontario. No new cases today in either Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, or the Renfrew County Health Unit. City News time 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some late day clearing for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls, 18 for the high today, and just a few clouds tonight, the low near 8 degrees. Tomorrow, lots of sunshine and quite mild, up to 21. For today, the high, 18.
And it's 14 degrees right now in Ottawa, 13 in Smiths Falls. Another hurdle passed for the new Civic Hospital. The National Capital Commission Board has approved the master site plan. NCC thumbs up is also contingent on several factors being met during each phase of hospital construction. That includes enhanced pedestrian and cycling connection, seamless and weather-protected connection to the Dow's Lake LRT station, and to ensure a green roof is maintained. Yesterday, the City Planning Committee approved the site plan as well. That goes to full council next week. Now, the new hospital is being built on Carling Avenue near Dow's Lake, scheduled to open in 2028. City News time 11:03. Conservative MPs are meeting for the first time since their election defeat. Leader Aaron O'Toole also facing a possible leadership review after losing a pair of seats compared to the 2019 election. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
While many MPs say they still have faith in their leader, not all Conservatives are singing the same tune. Others refuse to give a seal of approval on their way into caucus, saying Aaron O'Toole needs to prove to them he has a strategy to improve the party. Some flat out say they're unhappy with what happened in the vote. On his way into caucus, O'Toole is confident he still has the support of his team.
I've spoken to most of caucus, and yes, I do. We're all disappointed, no one more so than me. But we have to make sure we build on the gains we have, learn from where we fell short.
Today, caucus votes on Reform Act provisions that, among other things, could give MPs the power to hold a leadership review. O'Toole supports those measures. Even if caucus votes in favor of the review option, they would still have to follow another process to actually trigger that review. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcoming back syndicated columnist, National Post, Loonie Politics, Troy Media, Michael Taube, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. Good morning, Michael.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm great. It's great to hear from you again because it's such a big day in federal politics with the leader of the Conservative Party facing his critics, and our parliamentary correspondent, Cormac McSweeney, managed to get into a scrum with other reporters with Aaron O'Toole before Aaron O'Toole went into face his caucus this morning. So we're going to play some, this is fresh audio into us here, so this is perfect timing for us. Go ahead and play the tape. David.
The party has a process for how our conventions are held and how everything is going. We're talking to the party, to the fund, and all aspects of our organization in our review to make sure we learn the lessons, and we're ready. It's a minority parliament, sadly very similar to the one we left. We have to be ready to run again.
Do you think you have the support of caucus to stay on as leader?
I've spoken to most of caucus, and yes, I do. We're all disappointed, no one more so than me, but we have to make sure we build on the gains we have, learn from where we fell short. That's what any team, that's what any family does when you have a disappointment. You learn from it, you come together, and that's what the meeting will do today. Thank you very much.
Okay, so he sounds confident. I don't think you're going to say to a reporter, no, it looks terrible, and I think they're going to fire me today. But
right.
But what do you think is going to happen today, Michael Taube?
Well, you're right about having the brave face on, but at the same time, I don't think he's going to be fired either. There are certainly some members of the Conservative caucus, and a few have been vocal, who were frustrated with the results of the past federal election, which basically has created a near carbon copy of the previous parliament. So the 43rd and the 44th parliament look basically the same. And obviously there are Conservatives who are frustrated by the things that I and others have discussed now over time in various columns, op-eds, or just news reporting, that there was an abandonment at times of fiscal conservative approaches in Aaron O'Toole's election platform. Overall, the campaign was run very well, but there were mistakes that were made, which Mr. O'Toole did acknowledge and state very briefly during that media scrum that you just played. So I think there are definitely lessons to be learned. There are obviously things that have to be done within the party to restructure the message, keep some of the positives that happened during the campaign, and there were plenty from, Big Tent policies, finding ways to bring new conservatives on board, moderate social conservative values, et cetera, and build back towards fiscal conservative models and policies that have succeeded for, my old friend and boss, Stephen Harper, or conservatives who currently sit in Parliament, like UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and historical examples from Reagan, Thatcher on. So there's definitely work to be done. There's obviously some improvement that needs to be done. But at the same time, I'd be very surprised if a leadership review was triggered from all this. My guess is that O'Toole has the numbers and that he's confident going in.
So what is the caucus actually deciding today then, Michael?
Well, they're deciding a couple things. Firstly, there's the usual bits of, to be fair, grumbling. And that always happens when your side loses an election. I mean, we don't have to explain that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory to the listeners and to you and I. That's going to happen. There's obviously going to be people who are going to be mildly frustrated by what happened, and others are going to be furious that, from an ideological standpoint, things were so much different than what they believe in and what conservatives by nature in this country believe in, that it just didn't make any sense. Some of those are rational, some of those are irrational points of view, but they will be discussed and they'll be debated. Conservatives, generally speaking, in closed-door meetings tend to be more vocal than the other parties with things like that. Doesn't mean it gets into if fisticuffs are flying and a whole brouhaha bit develops, but there will be a lot of things that will be discussed, and people will try to acknowledge the good points, also acknowledge the bad points, and try to find a better way forward. But most importantly, there will be a gauge, or people will be able to gauge, including Aaron O'Toole, any senior staffers are in there, or if it's just MPs, that's who will be there. They'll get a bit of an idea of where the political winds are blowing, what Mr. O'Toole's support looks like within the party caucus, whether what he's saying during the media scrum is accurate, which I believe it is. I think most people believe it is, but again, they'll find out behind closed doors. And from there, it gets a little interesting because, as has been discussed by some people, Aaron O'Toole is trying to push for an immediate vote in terms of approval or disapproval of his leadership. And it's not that simple to trigger a leadership review. There's really a two-stage process that Cormac McSweeney correctly implied when during his little newscast before you and I started speaking. And because of that, it makes it difficult, one, to get the process begun, which they may choose to do and try to reform the model that currently exists. But then you need roughly 20% of your entire caucus to actually support a leadership review if that first point goes through. And again, even with a small caucus, that's very difficult to happen. And I just don't think there are that many MPs who are conservatives right now who are that mortally opposed to Aaron O'Toole remaining as party leader.
Okay, we'll see how the day unfolds, what comes of it. And, there will be the kind of official accounts, and then there will be the sources, speaking on condition of an anonymity, told us.
Loose lips sink ships, unfortunately, and there's always a lot of loose lips in Ottawa. We all know that.
Okay. The Prime Minister decided to go on vacation to Tofino, one of his favorite spots. We know that. And in so doing, skipped out on the very first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. What is your reaction to that decision?
Well, my reaction would not be terribly shocking, not because I wrote about it in one of my two columns. It's in my Troy Media column, but in general, I think it's pretty obvious. It was an embarrassment. It's just another layer on a man who has been, in my opinion, and in a lot of Canadians' opinions, a national and international embarrassment since he was first elected in 2015. Although, yes, he keeps getting reelected. Again, with lower popularity margins, his party's been in second place in the last two federal elections in terms of the popular opinion polls, which is horrifying. No prime minister in this country has ever experienced that. But based on the first past the post system, obviously it works to his advantage, and that's fine. That's the electoral system we have in this country, and that's how democracy works. But yeah, I mean, what he did was embarrassing, and it was disgraceful in many different ways. Obviously Indigenous communities and many of their leaders have come out and basically declared that it was just, it was a complete and total embarrassment, that it just, it looks terrible, and it's offensive to the residential school survivors, one Native chief actually said recently, and I can understand where they feel that way, because obviously it's been an important day. Yes, this Truth and Reconciliation, or Orange Shirt Day, if you like, has been a day of awareness, and certainly it's been discussed and followed since 2013. But when you actually make it into a national or a federal statutory holiday that's supposed to be, observed by Canadians from coast to coast to coast, at least in theory, you should think that political leaders, business leaders, community leaders, and others would want to participate. And they did. Provincial premiers from every political stripe, left and right, went out. They met with people. They took photos, did other things. They handled it properly. Community leaders handled it properly. Business leaders handled it properly. The only person who handled it improperly was our surfer boy PM, who headed off to Tofino, BC on the very first day, and then had his Liberal minions come out and say, oh, no, but he celebrated the night before. He was out there with all the people in the orange. No, you show up on the very day. Something that he's apparently talked about since 2015. One of his first priorities, if you remember, was among the first 10, was to rebuild and repair relations with the Indigenous community. Well, this is not the way to do it. So again, another embarrassment, another embarrassing scenario from a prime minister who's been an embarrassment since day one.
It's a collective failure for everybody inside that prime minister's office, too. What are they doing? What is Katie Telford doing, letting him get on that airplane? Why is she not grabbing him by the collar and saying, no, Mr. Prime Minister, no, you can wait one day. Tell the wife and kids.
Because we live in a democracy, Rob.
Unbelievable.
I know, but look, you know what? I'm not even going to fully blame them. I bet you that without knowing that there were some advisors to him saying, are you mad? You can't leave. You can't take a vacation. And taking a vacation at an $18 million house.
Oh, yeah.
What in God's name was this man thinking? Yeah. There would be people pulling out their hair if they had any left in that prime minister's office. But in the end, ultimately, and I know it sounds ridiculous, and people will say, but come on, his handlers must be able to stop him. He's still a free person living in a free society. So if Justin Trudeau and his wife and family want to go on vacation, you can't stop them. But clearly, he did not realize, especially when he was invited twice by a Native band to actually speak with them at that day, and he actually either refused or just declined politely, whichever he did. That was the way to dissipate all this anger and frustration. He could have gone his vacation, showed up at that event, gone back, and some people would have made a comment or something, but at least he made an appearance somewhere. The fact that he didn't have the political wherewithal, the political understanding to just diffuse the situation a little bit by making an appearance somewhere on September 30th, it's just hard to believe. It really is.
All right. I wanted to talk about Jason Kenney, but Jason Kenney is unpopular this week, and he'll be unpopular next week, so we can talk about him next week. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Are we 2 weeks?
Sure
I would like to ask you though, because I know you're a keen follower of everything that's going on in Washington D.C. right now, and are we 2 weeks away from economic Armageddon? Okay. It seems that the United States does this. The government in the United States goes through this game of chicken every so often about the debt ceiling. Okay. Right. So, explain this to our listeners and why it's important. The debt ceiling showdown.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we have seen this quite often in the past few years, especially with the ideologically rigid environment that we now see in Washington politics. But Yeah, I mean, very simply, the debt ceiling is something that every government in a democracy has to be mindful of, because if you go above your debt ceiling, then you don't have money to pay anybody who is a federal employee the next day, which basically means that the country goes broke or goes shut. You can't have that happen. You can obviously keep kicking the can a little bit and advance your, say, 2-week deadline to 3 weeks and 4 weeks, but if you let it happen, in theory, and I'm not saying in practice it would happen this way, but in theory, you go broke. Your country goes broke. And anyone who has ever gone broke before, which thank God I haven't, I don't know if you have, Rob, but most of us hopefully haven't, it's a terrible feeling to be under, to be sinking in debt, and to have your entire country sinking in debt. It's not a situation that any political party of the right or the left wants to experience. Unfortunately, the problem is, and we've seen this with previous presidents, including Mr. Obama, Mr. Trump, and now Mr. Biden, there is just so much battling and frustration between Democrats and Republicans in terms of what the best economic approach is, how to have some sort of a bipartisan legislation on certain issues, which has almost become invisible in recent years just because the differences between the two parties has become so extreme, that these battles over the debt ceiling have become, unfortunately, a frequent occurrence and may always be a frequent occurrence, to the point that there's always going to be these last-minute negotiations, last-minute shuffles, possibly an arrangement signed, just before midnight on the very day that, before you actually, the country goes broke, or a couple of days beforehand. We've seen this so much. But again, it's unfortunately part of the process, because the two parties just do not get along, like worse now than ever before, that being the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States. And because of that, these sorts of discussions and debates and problems and the ticking time bomb, which is the debt ceiling, I think it's just become a common occurrence in American politics, to the point that, unfortunately, American politicians on either side of the political spectrum are used to it. And Americans, especially those who work in the federal service, who, basically their livelihoods depend on the government operating day to day, as awful as it is, they're getting used to it, and that's terrible, because if the country has reached a point where these sorts of discussions, these sorts of debates, and the whole nature of debt ceiling has become part of the discourse on a regular basis, it means that not necessarily that the United States is broken, but that it has a broken model in terms of the way it manages its economy. And somehow, in some way, shape, or form, this has got to be fixed, or we're always going to see these last-minute heroics, every so often, year after year, or presidential term after presidential term. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are right now.
Okay. Let's hope Armageddon can be averted. I'm not really down with that. Thank you, Michael Taube, for this week.
My pleasure, Rob.
Okay,
Take good care.
Syndicated columnist Michael Taube, former speechwriter to Stephen Harper. When we come back, Sens Hockey with Wayne Scanlan from Sportsnet.ca. This is City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barbershop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey, because you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden you've got 10 other people working for you. You're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, just be really responsible and say we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then the week later the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry. And now it's just morphed into this whole, like I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it's great to talk Sens hockey all the time. I could do it year-round with Wayne Scanlan, who writes about the Ottawa Senators for Sportsnet.ca. He's back with us on City News this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Well, how much better is it for this hockey club now to be able to have a full training camp and preseason games, considering what the club had to deal with last season, Wayne?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, the elephant in the room, of course, is that Brady Tkachuk is not in the room. He's not in the building, so they're carrying on without him. But I think the beauty of this camp and this extended preseason, they've got 7 exhibition games. Some of them are not works of art. We can talk about last night's game, but it's given the staff and management time to assess players, to sort out which players belong up here, whether Shane Pinto should be a second or a fourth line center or needs more time in the American Hockey League. I think we've already answered that question and know that Shane Pinto is here to stay. Some other guys were just on the cusp and got sent down. We can think of a Sokolov or a Kostelik that probably are going to be up here sooner or later. Jacob Bernard-Docker, young defenseman that's down there now. So, they didn't have this last year, and so they basically had to rush into the season. Matt Murray, was kind of thrust into action without any practice time, just a few camp days. And they went with a very veteran lineup, and as we know, they got better later in the year when the lineup got younger, and you had the Brandstroms of the world and Victor Mete, and even Shane Pinto was up here playing 12 games, and they were much, much better. So I think it gives them a chance to really figure things out before the regular season starts on the 14th.
Okay. Should we be worried as Sens fans that it is taking so long to come to terms with Brady Tkachuk? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's getting more and more worrying by the day. Like when camp started, we all said, well, no big deal. It's going to get done, probably get done this week. He misses a few days of camp. He's a young guy. No biggie. He'll be here. And it's like second week of camp, okay, not here. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Like come Thursday, we're 1 week away from opening night, and not only are you concerned about maybe the readiness of this player, because it's going to take him, you'd like to get him at least a couple of games in before the season starts, but what kind of a deal is it? And are both sides happy? And is it a bridge deal where this player can be like his former landlord, Mark Stone, former roommate? We know what happened with him. He left when he he wasn't able to sign that longer-term deal, got traded at the deadline, and went on to somewhat glory with the Vegas Knights, and got feted there and is a franchise player there instead of here. This is the guy that everyone wants to saddle their horse up to, that this is the guy that could be the captain, but you had the owner saying that if there's a bridge deal, he won't be the captain. So there's a lot of concern, I think, in the broader community as to how this thing is going to go down.
Plus, the broader community really likes the player, but might sour on the player if they think he's being greedy, right? So,
and it's funny because as this has gone on, at first it's like, get him the contract, get him the long-term deal, give him what he wants. If it's true that they've offered him, basically 8 times 8, basically what Thomas Chabot is making, and maybe, he should be demanding a little more than that. It's a little bit later on. He might be a more important player. We don't know that yet. He's still only 22. It's going to take some time for him to reach his peak. But yeah, he could be the captain. Give him that long-term deal. But if they're trying to squeeze beyond that and want to get upwards of 9 or so, then I think it does turn a little bit. And then you say, you know what? Is this guy really the one we want? And is he going to be here long-term? And you know how that thing can go. And the organization might turn on him. It could be very ugly. But how long has he been wanting a bridge deal? If it's true, this report that came out yesterday, that they're more interested in a bridge deal and are no longer interested in a long-term deal. That sets up a series of questions, including, does he not have faith in the organization? Does he not think that there's going to be enough support here to build a Stanley Cup winner, and that he wants to get out earlier before that happens? Maybe not. Maybe it's like, look, things are uncertain right now with COVID and everything else. We're not even going to be able to have capacity crowds possibly. Let's do a shorter term deal, and we'll reconvene in a few years and re-up, and it's all good on both sides. Maybe that's the case, but right now I think there's lots of reasons to be concerned.
Yeah, especially when I hear re-up. I've seen that movie before. I don't want to see it again. All right, I do look forward to watching these young, very exciting Ottawa Senators again. When are they back in action again for some exhibition play?
Yeah, they have another game Thursday night. And then, so I think that's in Montreal. And then, so they're just a week away from, they got a couple exhibition games left. I think it's 3 left. And then get ready to go Thursday the 14th, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Battle of Ontario.
Excellent.
Let's get her going. And let's hope that number 7 is in the lineup that night.
Thank you, Wayne Scanlan.
Anytime, Rob.
Bye-bye. From Sportsnet.ca. That's Wayne Scanlan. This is City News.
1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 5th of October. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy, 16 degrees, 14 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Ontario rolls out a rapid COVID-19 testing program for schools in parts of the province with high transmission rates. The province's chief medical officer of health says it can help identify cases and prevent transmission in schools for kids that are not yet eligible to be vaccinated, as well as in licensed childcare centers. Local medical officers of health will decide whether to implement the program in their area. Parents will be able to choose if their kids get tested. Ontario confirming its lowest number of new cases in 7 weeks. 429 new COVID-19 infections today across the province, 70% in people who are not fully vaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. Another hurdle passed for the new Civic Hospital in Ottawa. The National Capital Commission Board approving the master site plan. The NCC thumbs up is contingent on several factors being met, including enhanced pedestrian and cycling connections, a seamless and weather-protected connection to the nearby O train, and maintaining a green roof. And the NCC honoring frontline workers for their role during the pandemic. The NCC dedicating a park bench today in Majors Hill Park. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The Paradise Papers. There are more than 3,000 Canadian names, corporate names, individuals, listed in the Paradise Papers. They include names you would recognize: Montreal Canadiens, Loblaw, Dare Foods, the cookie company, Maple Leaf Foods, the Bacon Company, William Molson, beer magnate, Saputo, cheese billionaire, Jacques Villeneuve, race car driver, Elvis Stoico, figure skater. Some of the headlines: secret wealth and dealings of world leaders exposed. Huge Pandora Papers leak exposes secret offshore accounts of politicians, celebrities, and billionaires. So let's take another look at this story today, because it's going to be big all week. Toby Sanger is here. He is Executive Director of Canadians for Tax Fairness. Good morning.
Pleased to join you, Rob.
Very nice to hear from you. What is your reaction to the information that we've learned so far from the Paradise Papers?
Well, this was a big leak of information from a variety of different tax havens. It was bigger than the Paradise Papers. It took hundreds of journalists months to go through, but still, it's just the tip of the iceberg on this. We know that there's a lot more out there that hasn't been revealed. What struck me about this is that there were so many powerful people and politicians identified in it. Dozens of presidents, prime ministers, former presidents, prime ministers, heads of state. And that gives an indication of why there's been so little movement on these issues. When people who are making the laws are actually profiting from this or and taking advantage of tax havens, they're unlikely to close them down.
Yeah, it doesn't do much to, say, dispel the narrative among those who really do believe the system is rigged, so to speak, right? Because in this case, you have powerful people, heads of state, heads of government, who seem to be benefiting from the system that maybe they're rigging. What do you think, Mr.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want people to become too cynical about that. I mean, it frankly is the reality. Those with money and power have got more influence both in terms of making laws and policies, and but also in the application of them. A criticism of the Canada Revenue Agency is that they're often tougher on ordinary individuals and small businesses than they are on big businesses and the wealthy, and that's been
That's also been found by the Auditor General, so it's been confirmed in those ways. But people can make a difference. We have had some progress in a number of different areas. There are some major negotiations going on right now over reforming international corporate tax rules. But the politicians aren't going to make a difference unless the people, the public, and the media really push them on these issues. So it is possible to make change and positive change, but we need to raise concern and raise our voices and get loud about these issues and stay very vigilant about these things. I mean, we're a tiny organization, a lot smaller.
Oh, sure, yeah.
A lot smaller than the ones that are backed by business and wealthy organizations, but we work in collaboration with other organizations, and we're really glad that a whole group of media and newspapers got together to go through these millions of files and make these connections. It involved a lot of research and make this into a big issue. I mean, one of the things is that a lot of this information should be public. It shouldn't be. These world leaders shouldn't be able to hide their assets and their wealth in offshore companies. So we need much greater transparency. There's been some progress in achieving that, but we need to make more of it. The federal government committed to introducing a public register of who the real owners of different companies are. Canada is one of the least transparent among the G20 in this way. We need to know how much the big companies also pay in tax in different jurisdictions. We don't know that. I mean, people are kind of shocked that we don't know how much Amazon pays in tax and what its revenues are in Canada. That's not public information. We also need to close down these, basically close down tax havens, but make it so that people can't bring their income, whether it's corporate income or individual income, back from those countries and those other jurisdictions essentially tax-free. What's happened over the past decade is the federal government, under both the Conservatives and Liberals, signed a whole lot of tax treaties and tax agreements. They sounded innocuous on the outside. It was tax information exchange agreement. Sounds really good, but part of it was that there was an agreement that people could bring their income back, essentially tax-free. It could be tax-free. I mean, if it met certain conditions.
Okay.
Back into Canada. Now that's just wrong as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I want to ask you, Mr. Sanger, because when the news media reaches out to people named in a leak like this, say the Paradise Papers, they go to a member of the Saputo family, or, for example, Elvis Stoico has commented on this, or whatever. They say, look, I followed all the rules. I hired a firm. The firm said, I have done nothing that is against any of the rules. None of this is illegal. What is your reaction to that? How do you react to that?
My reaction to that is that's the problem, right?
That's the problem.
That's the problem, that all this is legal, right?
Right. Okay.
And, I mean, the head of Apple, said the same thing. We pay all the applicable taxes. We're not breaking any rules. Well, the problem is that the rules need to be changed, right? I mean, some of this stuff is in a gray area, right? It depends on how the courts decide and what governments prosecute and how they change the laws. But the real problem is that this is allowed. I think most ordinary Canadians and small businesses, they don't have a subsidiary. They don't have a trust in a tax haven. They can't shelter their wealth in that way. I mean, the digital economy has kind of put this type of tax avoidance on steroids. But I think most people think that everybody should just pay their fair share of tax, and that's we've got into a situation where often the wealthiest can pay much lower rates of tax. I mean, Warren Buffett has been saying this for decades, right? That he pays a lower rate of tax than his secretary.
Well,
right?
I guess you have to pay very close attention to the language around tax. Are we taxing income or are we taxing wealth, right? That's the big difference.
Yeah, and that's another thing, right? I mean, a lot of people said, well, because it's so hard, because and this came out in this leak in the U.S. just a few months ago. This leak of IRS data, they found that some of the wealthiest people in the world didn't pay any income tax in some years. No income tax, right? So that's a strong argument.
Because they're wealthy. It's not like they're getting a T4 at the end of the year and paying tax on it, you know.
That's true, and that's a good point, right? But they've got a lot of money, and
they have a lot of money.
They're able to reduce their taxable income to zero using different techniques. But it's the same thing with the large corporations too, right? It's the largest corporations in the world that often pay the lowest rates of tax, right? I joke with a local video store that I used to go to, I haven't been there for a year, that they were paying higher rates of tax than Netflix was, right? You know, they're paying more tax in Canada than Netflix was. So this unfair tax system has led to much more corporate concentration, right? I mean, the Amazons have done much better, and the Main Street businesses have suffered, right? So,
all right.
And we've seen that through the pandemic. So we really need to fix it.
Let me ask you just finally, because we're running a little tight on time, but how would you say, when it comes to things like this, tax fairness, using loopholes, favoring tax havens, how does the Canadian situation compare globally? Are we necessarily better, worse? What's your sense of it in the global context?
We certainly haven't been a world leader, and then another problem is that Canada has become a bit of a haven for people snowwashing their money and money laundering through real estate and other things. So that's affected people here too, who've had money that's come into Canada. It's basically being money laundered through casinos and also through buying real estate. Partly because Canada's got this Boy Scout image, right? But because we don't have much transparency, it's been an easy way to launder money internationally. So that's a problem. And we also we've been quite a laggard in terms of some other, in terms of the reforms that are being pushed internationally. And the thing is that we have a lot that we could share. The way that we deal with allocation of profit between provinces in Canada is a type of model that they should be applying internationally as well. So big companies can't shift their profit to shell companies and subsidiaries, which is done so widely. I mean, 30-40% of the companies around the world are shell companies, right? You know, they don't employ anybody. They're just there. They're largely there for tax purposes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your insight on this issue this morning.
Pleasure. Pleasure
it's
talking
greatly
with you,
appreciated.
Rob.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Toby Sanger is with Canadians for Tax Fairness on the Paradise Papers. 11:44. Be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
There is much to discuss with our next guest, Mike Wood, Ottawa small business advocate. Good morning, Mike. Welcome back.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to hear from you. I hope you're well these days.
Things are great, thanks.
Yeah, that's good. The FEDCO meeting is happening today for Ottawa City Council. This is the most powerful city committee outside of the full city council in and of itself, and it's voting on a suite of local business tax measures today.
Right.
What stands out for you? What could be really helpful here for our local business community?
Well, I think that when we look at some of the property tax breaks that the city is proposing, I think this is going to help. Some people say that the city should do more, but as we know, the city, is limited in their scope of what they can do according to the provincial rules. So anything that the city can bring forward, such as property taxes, talking about 15% reduction over 2 years, I think is a good thing.
Okay. So, for example, this is what it says here, that the Finance and Economic Development Committee recommend that council, and then there's 5 measures here, adopt the optional small business property tax subclass for the 2022 taxation year and subsequent years based on a criteria outlined in this report. Adopt a 15% discount for the commercial and industrial small business property tax subclass phased in equally over 2 years starting in the 2022 taxation year. You'll take it, right? You'd take it, right?
Absolutely. And this looks to affect or help 10,000 small businesses, according to the city. And so if we can help 10,000 businesses survive, Rob, it's still going to be such a crazy time. There's so many that have not recovered yet. So if this is part of a strategy, then I'm all for it.
Yep. And it goes on. Eliminate commercial industrial excess land property tax subclass discount phased out equally over 2 years in the 2020-22 taxation year. Apply to the government of Ontario to match the small business property tax subclass discount. So in other words, we're willing to go 15%. Are you, Doug Ford? Right? This kind of thing. So
right.
All of that at FEDCO today. Now, so that's local. Then you have what's happening at the federal level because, the clock is ticking here. And we don't know what's really going to happen after October 23rd when you're going to have kind of this whole suite of the most popular pandemic relief programs for businesses, namely the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy. They're scheduled to end on October 23rd. And what's going to replace them? So there are a lot of questions about whether these programs should be extended, for example. And I know there's a lobbying effort underway in certain circles for that to happen. What do you think about extending the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy programs beyond October 23rd? What do you think, Mike Wood?
Well, I think that it has to happen. The rent subsidy, when I did own Ottawa Special Events, was really, it saved the business. I look at rent being where we are at $13,000, and a bill coming in of that magnitude without a rent subsidy, that's worrisome. And there's so many small businesses that are in this position. My only, my hope right now is that we were in this position many times throughout the pandemic. I remember I met with Wayne Easter at the time, the chair of the Federal Finance Committee, in June of 2020, and it was called the SECRA program at the time. That was the rent program. And I said to Mr. Easter, I said, coming July 1st, the program runs out, and then it was extended, and then it was extended again, and then in September we saw Minister Freeland put, more extensions in place. So I really hope that the government continues to focus on the recovery of small business. Getting through the pandemic was one thing. Now, with everything starting to come back, the recovery is what we need to be looking at.
Okay. The government has this alternative to the wage subsidy. It's called the Canada Recovery Hiring Program, which is basically, okay, you hire somebody, we'll help you cover some of the cost of taking on a new employee. What do you think of a program like that?
Well, I think that if this is what this is going to turn into, we need all the support possible, Rob.
Yeah.
We have a national labor crisis right now in many industries. We need people to come back to work. And, of course, not only do we have a labor problem, we also have a cost problem. There's all kinds of costs across the country for all different items that are skyrocketing. And it's going to be hard for a lot of industry. Right now, I really feel for their hospitality and restaurant business. They've got a labor problem. They've got a cost problem of food going up. And so we do need all of these programs to, benefit those. We can't have mass bankruptcies. One of the things that I was so vocal about was that small businesses have personal guarantees on loans with the banks. And, we can't afford to have people go bankrupt because their homes are attached to it and their assets. We just need the government to, come back in, focus, and really do everything they can to help people in our community.
Okay. What did you think about the speech from the throne from the Ford government? What are you hearing, and what are your impressions of the direction that the Ford government is moving in right now, Mike?
Well, the one thing, Rob, that I thought was interesting was that they did say that they would, through the pandemic, they've never hesitated to spend money where it was necessary to protect lives and support families and business. Well, we need this to continue. I spoke to a business owner this morning, who told me he has not got his second round, that $10,000 to $20,000 from, back in April. He still has not got it. He didn't get the first one. But
the grant. The grant,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, the thing is that now we're looking at October. The second one never came. So, we need the provincial government to look at this and say, okay, we will continue to support families and businesses, and we need them to essentially, put their money where their mouth is.
Okay. Hey, look, Mike, it's always so good to have you on our program. I'm really appreciative that you could take the time for us today.
Thanks so much,
Keep
Rob.
up the
I love
good
joining
fight.
you.
Yeah, bye-bye. Small business advocate here in Ottawa, yeoman's work again. That is Mike Wood. Coming up, the noon news, of course, with our full news team and our full newscast coming up right at noon here. And then Sam LaPrade, the Sam LaPrade Show between noon and 2 o'clock. We're back tomorrow morning right after the 9 o'clock news. You score your political fix tomorrow. I'll have all the latest on Aaron O'Toole's fight for his job tomorrow. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.